Today's episode is proudly sponsored by the Rising Tide Mastermind. The term mastermind was originally written in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Before that, the earliest documentation that we have of a mastermind group was Ben Franklin's group that he used to meet every single week in a tavern that he called Huntus. Nation, there's no doubt about it. Life is too short to do it alone, and it's not very much fun to do it alone in. Nation, I urge you to go to scalinguph2o.com and find out if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you. I'd love to have a 15-minute call with you to explain all things Rising Tide Mastermind and see if this is a group that's right for you and you are right for the group. Go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, yesterday was Halloween. If you are listening to this episode as soon as it drops, one of my favorite holidays. I just enjoy dressing up. And we've had a couple of Association of Water Technologies conferences that have taken place over Halloween. I think it was 2 years straight that it took place over Halloween. And that was just so much fun. We had people that dressed up, walked the exhibit hall, and we just had a great time with it. My wife and I went as Star Trek characters. We had a different costume for each one of those years. Yes, insert nerd joke here. And the memory that I still have burned in my brain is John Zabrita going as a Joker-esque clown, like the Heath Ledger type Joker. John, you still haunt my evenings with that outfit. And Nation, I'm pretty sure it made the analyst, but you saw Star Trek people with a clown behind them. I hope I can get that picture so I can share that with you. I do remember seeing that in an AWT publication, so maybe my team can find that. And then John Zabrita can now haunt your memories and dreams and nightmares as well. By the way, I don't mind telling you, I have issues with clowns, spiders and clowns. Anything else I can deal with. For some reason, spiders and clowns, not so much. I read it when I was about 10 years old. I probably shouldn't. I think that is the scariest book that has ever been written. And if you didn't know, I am a huge Stephen King fan. I think he is one of the best authors of our time. But that has nothing to do with water treatment. I just wanted to say happy Halloween, happy November. Today is November 1st, which means we have 2 months left in this year. We have 2 months left in this quarter. And did you know that the fourth quarter is almost always the most productive quarter of the entire year? In fact, the third month of the fourth quarter is normally the most productive month of the entire year. Why is that? That is because we are running out of year. We're running out of quarter. We are running out of time to get things done and allow them to account for this year. Now, this is the premise in the book that I talk about all the time on this podcast called 12-Week Year. And you can get that by going to Audible. I know that the Scaling Up Nation loves Audible because they can consume books while they're driving from account to account. You can get that by going to scalinguph2o.com/12, the number 12 week year. And if you don't have Audible, well, we've got an affiliate relationship with them where we can get you a free book and a free month by simply going to scalinguph2o.com/audible. And maybe you listen to the 12-week year so you can get the most out of the next 2 months. And I promise if you do, your January is going to be jump started because you're going to know what to do to treat January, February, and March like most people treat December. Folks, it is a secret weapon. I've been using it for years. I've been coaching people that I work with on it for years. It is the premise of how we do planning in the Rising Tide Mastermind. So I cannot recommend the 12-week year more, and I can't recommend you to make the most out of this last quarter. Scale Up Nation, something that is coming up in just 2 weeks is the hang. It's going to be the last hang that we have this year. Mark your calendars, November 14th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We're all going to get together. We're going to meet each other. We might solve a few problems, and we are guaranteed to have fun. Find out everything you ever wanted to know about the hang by going to scalinguph2o.com/hang, and you can sign up, put it in your calendar, and I will see you there. Nation, don't forget to go to our events page where we have got everything that's going on for the rest of the year, including things that are happening next year and even the following year, so you can start protecting your calendar for the things that you want to do. And I have to tell you, a jump start in any water treater's career when they're trying to learn the next thing is to go to a conference, to go to an expo, to go to a training and meet people. And if that intimidates you, all right, fine, meet one person. I'm going to meet one person when I go to this conference. I promise if you meet one, it'll catch and you'll probably get introduced to some more. But maybe that allows you to do what you need to do. And then go to the papers. There are so many amazing papers that these conferences have, and it might spark something that you want to try different. It might spark a new way of thinking on how you do something. It might spark the next new thing that changes everything for you, but you're not going to know it unless you get yourself there. And the first step to that is going to scalinguph2o.com and going over to our event section. Speaking of our webpage, we have had so many people go over to our Legionella resources page. And folks, this is a tremendous resource. It's something that our team has put together. Every time we mention the word Legionella, it is referenced here because normally that comes with some sort of code or standard, some sort of legislation, some sort of guideline, whatever it is. If it was mentioned on this show, we've got it documented there so you can go to one place to find out all these things in the news about Legionella, maybe some that even haven't made the news yet. So you don't have to be surprised. You can read up on it. You can have the right conversation with your clients before there's an issue so everybody's doing the right thing. And you can even learn what the right thing is by going to that very page. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com and then going over to our resources page, clicking on Legionella. Nation, some of our most listened to episodes are August because of Legionella Awareness Month. And this is really Waterborne Pathogens Month. So many people are learning how to have the right conversation by listening to those episodes and going to our resources page. I've got it all there. Just let your fingers do the walking, and you will see everything that you need to learn something new about Legionella and waterborne pathogens. Well, Nation, you know one of my favorite organizations is the Association of Water Technologies. I started in the AWT when I just started my business, and I was told whether I could afford it or not, I needed to make sure that I paid the dues for AWT. And in fact, I was told I couldn't not afford it because if I was just looking at the amount of money that I was spending, which isn't that much for the AWT, if you look at some other organizations, you really need to look at what you get back. Now, I know there's a lot of people listening saying, hey, Trace, I write my check to X organization each and every year, and I don't get anything back. I don't get a return on my investment. So here's the secret that you may not know. It's not what you get out of whatever your membership dues is, it's what you put in along with your membership dues. That means you need to volunteer. That means you need to step up and say, I will help with that. Maybe that's joining a committee. Maybe that's taking on some work in a task force. Maybe that's just meeting people at the next expo or convention. But you need to put the work in. And you might say, Trace, I don't have time to put the work in. I don't have the desire to put the work in. But let me tell you, when you do, it won't pay you back double. It will pay you back tenfold. And it's not going to happen overnight. But what will happen is people will see that you are there to help the industry. And this works with the AWT. It works with any association we can put in the blank. If you make sure that you are helping whatever it is that they are trying to do, people are going to see that, and inherently they are going to want to help you. I've had a career that AWT has helped for well over 20 years. I was president of that organization. And because of all of those things, I've got some tremendous friendships. And folks, you better believe when I see something that I've never seen before, I have got so many people in my contacts that I've met because I've given things to organizations. I've worked with organizations to make them better, that people want to help me. So it's my challenge to you to not just join an organization, but to get involved with that organization. And it is the AWT that brings us to our guest today. I saw a version of what we're going to talk about at the AWT conference in Grand Rapids, and I wanted to bring these two individuals to the Scaling Up Nation. So, Nation, here's our interview. My lab partners today are Tessa Ng and Tammy Faber of HOH. Welcome, both of you, to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thanks, Trace and Scaling Up Nation. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Tammy, you have been on before. You joined us back on episode 252, and we were talking about how you got into this industry. Tessa, we're just meeting you for the first time, and I can't wait to introduce you both again to the Scaling Up Nation. So, Tessa, why don't we start with you? Do you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Tessa Ng. I'm a service quality supervisor for HOH Water Technology in the Chicagoland area. I manage a team of 4 water treatment reps currently, and I do have a small list of customer accounts that I still service their water treatment programs. It's kind of a bit of best of both worlds because I still get to service customers and accounts, but also get to help other water treaters grow their career. I have a master's in environmental engineering, specializing in water treatment systems, mostly wastewater and advanced technologies, and then a bachelor's in molecular biology.
And how long have you been in the industry?
I started with Nalco Water, I believe it was 2018, working in their Legionella lab. And shortly after that, 2021, I moved to HOH full-time water treatment. I've been doing that ever since, and I love it.
Awesome. Tammy, we've had you on before. When was episode 252? Do you remember when you were on? I'm trying to remember the date.
I want to say it was 2022, maybe the end of 2022.
Okay.
It was about a year after I got to HOH.
Well, what have you been doing since then?
Well, since then, I have been promoted to sales director, and I also have both sales and marketing now. And I am in my last year of service to the AWT board of directors. So lead a team of about, we're hiring right now. So it's going to be a team of about 15 by the time this airs. And we handle everything business development related from Michigan to South Dakota down to Texas.
Now, you mentioned the Association of Water Technologies. Thank you for serving on the board. That was something that I did as well. I know we're always looking for people to step up and help run that great organization. What can you tell them from your board seat?
From the board seat, we need people that love this industry, that have a heart to help others and to grow others. There is no amount of expertise needed. The only thing you need is a willing heart and time. There is anything that you might want to volunteer in: boiling water, cooling water, technical committees of all sorts, young professionals, women of water. There are so many opportunities to just get involved, even a charity task force. So there are spots. We need people. We need people that want to help other water treaters and help the next generation of water treaters. And committee work is fun. I love serving. I started my first committee was Business Resources Committee, and it's where I made a lot of great connections. And then we need leaders to step up to serve as committee chairs and to even be on the board.
Well, I'm just going to get us started out of the gate. I'm going to be as blunt as possible that the water treatment industry historically has been male dominated. So I know it's changing, but I want to ask from both of your perspectives, what is that like being in your positions? And now that we're getting more women in the industry, what can you tell the Scaling Up Nation about what it's like to be in your seat right now?
Well, I guess I'll start and we'll move to our younger professional. When I originally started my career, I was in paper industry, but I bought water treatment chemicals. And even then, I was the only person in the room that was female, and I was usually the youngest. And now I have seen it evolve. So I'm not the only person in the room. I'm definitely no longer the youngest, unfortunately. But I just look at our board of directors as an example. We have 3 women on there now. There have been other women who have served, but we've never had 3 at once. And the board and the AWT just this past year made WOW a full committee, and they are embracing women and young professionals joining this organization and this industry. Tessa is an example of a shining young woman who has stepped into this role. She's now a leader and she leads other women. And so I think our last 2 out of our 4 SQSs are female. And the last few hires, we've hired a number of females. And Tessa is just one of the shining examples. They're brilliant, they're smart, and they work really hard.
I think it's kind of exciting to be kind of part of this evolution. It could really go either way. I know when I'm out in the field, I am often the only woman that those people have seen all day or all week at work. I stand out like a sore thumb all the time. And that could either be really scary and I could get a bunch of harassment and issues and things like that. But I am fortunate to be part of a company that really kind of supports me and part of a lot of different groups like the WOW group. And we have our own Women in the Field group as well. So I get to be supported. And instead of being in a scary situation like that, it's more of like, yeah, I can do all this stuff too. And I can, wield the channel locks and carry my bag. And it's not a big deal. And it's kind of exciting to see AWT also be that community and that support system as well.
How have you both seen diversity change within our communities since the time you've been in the industry?
I think for me, I have, gosh, if I think back to when I originally started in my first water treatment job 16 years ago, there was one female sales manager in the company I worked for. She was the only female sales manager I knew in the industry. And then the only other female, I chuckle because she serves on the board with me, but I was in Texas then. And Pam Simmons was with Prominent then. And so those were the 2 females I knew in water treatment. That was it. And so now I have this whole tribe behind me. I know at least probably 60 women across the country that are in our field. And that's a huge step from, you know, the early, I guess I'll say early 90s.
So I was hired with the pretty much one of the only other women in the company at the same time. And I think there was a lot of like shock and some of the coworkers maybe not sure how to interact or like help teach me things. But now it's just become so normalized and standard. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a place where I can do some of the hiring and help other women or diverse minorities and young people, old people alike, like kind of help them become a part of this community and show them like there is a lot of really great things with water treatment, and there's it's exciting to be a part of it. There's a lot to gain.
Water treatment is becoming more of a melting pot, if you will. How does that diversity help us collaborate, help us solve problems, help us make the entire industry better?
I think one of the things, we presented a paper last year on diversity at AWT conference, which is, I think, where this conversation started. And we used a stat from a Lincoln Forrester study then, and it talked about that sales organizations who have robust diversity and inclusion practices have a 6% higher customer satisfaction rating, 12% higher sales, 28% higher conversion rates, and a 3% higher sales forecast than their peers. And so diversity matters because our customers are diverse. It affects our business in a positive manner. And it really does make the workplace better. I can think of multiple instances, young, old, male, female, we've got a problem at a customer and we all put our heads together. And there's so many different viewpoints and experience that come together to bring the perfect solution to the customer. And if we didn't have all that talent and that diversity in the room, we might not have come up with that solution.
Yeah, I would say that having a diverse community of water treaters means that we can have a more diverse customer caseload. So I might not be able to connect with a customer the same way that someone else can, and that's okay. And that way we can kind of help a much wider range of customers, the more diverse we are, I think.
On this podcast, we've talked about temperaments quite a bit, that we all come with a different set of temperaments. Or Tammy, you and I have the same temperament. Tessa, I'm not sure what yours is. Do you know what color you are?
Definitely.
So we're all
Three
reds
reds.
here.
Yeah.
Then that's a great example. So we are three reds, but we all have different life experiences. And now this customer's calling, maybe they have an issue, and I guarantee we're going to see it three different ways. And if we can put our heads together and we can talk about, how is the lens of this customer seeing this, we're going to have a much better situation than if we're just going to run in and think we understand how he or she is seeing his issue.
Yeah, exactly.
What can companies do to help ensure that collaboration and that diversity is going on within their culture?
I think one of the things is just support in a culture in general. It doesn't matter if male or female, the first is trust, accountability. No one is going to thrive in a culture that doesn't have that. And that doesn't matter young, old, male, female. And so that's where it starts. And I think the other place it starts is managers who truly care about people and want their employees to thrive. And so I know from my perspective as a manager, that's one of the things I pride myself in, is talking to my team about where are they stuck? Where do they need help? And in those conversations is where they feel supported, where they can thrive. And I think that is where diversity matters. And Tessa talked about it earlier. We have a woman in the field call once a quarter. We try to do it once a month, but during cooling season, that can be a challenge. And that's a group of ladies that work here at HOH. And we talk about things that are getting in our way, where we need help, or even that customer that might be a little hard to deal with. And I think it's helped us. What do you think, Tessa?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's a great way to kind of get some steam out about issues that we're having, or feel validated that this isn't only happening to me and we've all experienced these things. So it's fairly new, but we're getting the hang of it and really enjoying it. We also have several other ones that we are encouraged to attend. There's one, BOMA, Emerging Leaders, which is kind of for property management groups and things, to connect a lot of us younger professionals with property managers that might be coming up, or people that also are vendors for their properties. And then the AWT has one as well, the Young Professionals, which is a great way to connect as well.
One of the big issues we have in our industry is a lot of people are retiring, or they're getting ready to retire. There's a lot of information that's getting ready to get lost within our industry. And there's so many people out there that would be excellent in this industry. They've just never heard of it. What are some ways that we can attract new people into our industries?
You want to take that one, Tessa?
Sure. I never knew that this was a career option for me. I started out in life sciences and biology. I thought this was exclusively just for some faraway chemical engineer. But I think showing that there's women that can do this job, there's biology majors that can do it, chemical engineers for sure, and showing people succeeding and things like that. I've talked to like first grade classes about women in STEM and what kind of job I have and how I enjoy it. I've also talked to a few college graduates and things like that. That's also part of connecting with the community is giving back to that younger generation too. I connected with several other professional contacts that I had to say like, hey, I think you would be really great for water treatment. There's a lot of great things that I love about it, the flexibility, the challenges, all the different technical things you can learn. So kind of helping bring other people up too is kind of our role.
I think STEM is the key and really connecting with universities and letting people know that there's this whole world of water. I've heard several of those water treaters who are about to retire remind me several times that water treatment and water treaters were the first conservationists because that's what they do. They try to conserve energy and reduce water usage. And so sharing that knowledge that hey, you want to make an impact on the environment, this is where you can do it because we do know that that's important to Gen Z and millennials that what they do makes a difference in the world and water treatment does make that difference.
You all did a survey for your AWT paper last year, and you say that 63% of the people that you surveyed in one way or form had to deal with some sort of unprofessional behavior dealing with age, gender, or race. Can you speak to that?
Sure. And the interesting thing is, those were men and women that responded. And at some point in everyone's career, I like to say that you've been the only. You were the only water treater. You were the only person that's only been in the field for a year, 2 years. You're the only woman, the only minority, whatever it may be. And people, they question your knowledge, they question your ability. And the best example is that customer who doesn't think you know what you're doing, and this is an important customer and they are gruff and maybe not harassing, but they're on the edge of what is professionally appropriate. And how do you go back to your boss if you're a young water treater and say, this customer's out of line? You know, if you're brand new in your job, you can think, I could lose my job if I don't, and they don't know where to turn. And so giving people the skills to know that, hey, it's not okay that people treat you like that and talking them through, where do you go? Of course, your first thing is HR if it's internal, but we are starting to talk about those things on our call in the field. Like, how do you deal with that guy? Who do you go to? Because it's not okay. All of us at one time or another have had that person that just really doubts us and has gone over the line. And knowing that there are people at your company that can support you and back you up and making sure that our teams know that it's okay. And that's what's great about the role Tessa's in now. She can, show that to her team from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you are radiating kind of that professional confidence and you've got that support system to back you up, all my direct reports know that I'm backing them 100%. So they feel supported, they have the confidence, and they're learning the technical knowledge and they're getting there and they're winning over these customers and they're dealing with these difficult situations. And it doesn't have to be this ugly thing where you have to bring in your manager and, have this argument. Like, I've had a lot of good success, and I know my employees have, where they've come in and they have not loved them, and now they're like their best customer, and it's such a great relationship. And I love those customers because I love a good challenge, and that's just a really rewarding feeling to kind of see that trust being earned in real time.
I love that you both talk about culture. Is someone listening today and they want to make sure that they have a culture, a positive culture around this issue, what are some of the policies and procedures they should institute?
I think first and foremost, don't act like it doesn't exist. Talk about it. Encourage your employees to share when they're in an uncomfortable situation. And I said it earlier, a culture of trust, a culture of openness. And my team recently, we've started talking. I'm being coached by Novus Global. And one of the things that my coach has challenged me on is, what are you tolerating? And so I'm pushing my team to, what are you tolerating? And really asking ourselves, like, what should we do and what shouldn't we, tolerate as a team? And how do we bring the team together through those challenges?
In your presentation for AWT, you brought up something that I know we talk a lot about in the mastermind, and that was imposter syndrome. Can you talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, why we feel it, and what we do about it?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is really just something that everyone struggles with, even like executives, Supreme Court justices. So overcoming that is hard. It does take some intentional practice. Symptoms can look like kind of just being anxious all the time. It can feel like you may have tricked someone into hiring you and you're constantly in fear of being discovered as incompetent. It can also look like people pleasing or kind of avoiding raising your hand for unique opportunities that you might be interested in. It definitely holds you back. And it could be, constantly dwelling on your mistakes, being really sensitive to negative feedback, being an over perfectionist on your work. You shouldn't tie your self worth to your accomplishments. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of work on this with some practice. I would say the biggest thing to start with is banishing kind of those unhelpful thought processes and word choices. I am the worst at this. I always have a terrible habit of over apologizing. I have a coworker that's constantly calling me out for it, and I love him for it. But there is a huge difference between saying, so sorry I'm late versus thank you for waiting for me. I think that's significant. And then avoiding things that project constantly in the past or future, should, could, would, always. If those words and thoughts aren't helping you, what are they doing to change the situation? It's hard to reframe kind of those intrusive thoughts and languages, but shifting your focus, I think, too, on how you can create value rather than the outcome that you bring. I think managers, they do want to hear about the times you've saved X amount of dollars and, did this project and how you organized X amount of people, but don't focus on like, okay, I don't have that MBA or I don't have the chemical engineering degree, but I have a lot of great value that I've created from projects I've worked on. When someone says, tell me about yourself, when you're interviewing and networking, these things are important. Articulating your wins, your obstacles, those projects that you're proud of. I think that's kind of the biggest first step.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, I'm a Ted Lasso fan. And so I was watching an episode in I can't remember her name, but she owns the football club. And she is the only woman in the room. And I was sharing with Tessa this week, she has this exercise she goes through and she looks in the mirror and she like makes herself very large and makes a face. And she was in one of the later episodes, she was going into a room where she was going to be the only woman. And when she looked in her mirror, she saw herself as a little girl instead of her grown reflection. And it really hit me. How many times do I look in the mirror and that's the way I feel? And one of the things I've been working on with my coach is really pulling out what those limiting beliefs are. And those are the things that they're rooted deep inside you, like a dandelion that you've dealt with your entire life. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I shouldn't be here. Those imposter syndrome things. And so I've gone through this exercise with her to write those down, forgive myself for them. And now I have a list of things I read every morning to really make it cellular change that I am good enough. I am good at my job. I am confident and I deserve to be here. And like, really working on yourself is the key to this, because the other side of that coin was when she was in the room with these guys, she got a text from her best friend and she said, just remember, they're all little boys too. And that's, to me, was saying, you know what? Sometimes the guys in the room are just as nervous as we are and dealing with the same insecurities we are.
Well, I have to say, when I was living in Richmond, Virginia, and the company I was working for said, will you be the project manager for a big Army account that we had? I was just waiting for them to realize that I fooled them during that interview, that if they really knew me the way I knew me and all the things I didn't know, then how could they have ever picked me for that job? And I remember it was weeks where I just thought, I hope they don't ask me a question that I don't know. We all experience that. And I love that you guys brought that to light. And several people in the room, I don't think they had ever heard that before. And then when you talked about it, it was like, oh, that's normal. Everybody feels that way. And that's an empowering thought.
Yeah, your most limiting factor is yourself, right? Because otherwise, long term, this imposter syndrome is going to lead to realizing your full potential or the anxiety that you felt or the depression. So it can really wear on you over time.
Are there any, and you shared from the show, of course, but any other tips that you can give that you've used in the past that somebody else might be able to use when they are maybe in self doubt, that they can walk past that and let the room know that they have confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I would say overall, practicing, like I said, shutting out the imposter syndrome with those unproductive thought processes, but also working on bragging about yourself and your accomplishments. This is relevant for your current role, for future roles, for networking. Accepting compliments is really hard for a lot of people. Being able to speak to that value that you bring and your superpower that you have outside of what your resume says. I mean, you can have 10 chemical engineers and all went to Purdue, but what makes you unique? What kind of value are you bringing to the team? Because you can apply that confidence to your workplace. You can try signing up for things that push you outside of your comfort level and presenting things with confidence, such as Tammy roping me in to do the AWT conference. It's definitely outside of my comfort zone, but you won't grow and you won't get better at these things until you get comfortable in the uncomfortable. Taking up that space gets easier over time. You are the expert of the presentations you're making, the projects you're working on. You're, a big part of that. So letting go of things that you can't change, getting feedback, and getting a mentor that'll really push you, like Tammy, to give you some great feedback on how you can kind of work through these things.
Tammy, let me ask you. So, as a mentor, how do you give tough advice in a caring way?
Well, we use a feedback tool actually that we learned again through Novus Global, and that is to actually ask. We ask all the time, "Hey, can I give you a compliment?" But have you ever asked anybody, "Can I give you some feedback?" Like, what if you don't need feedback that day? What if your dog's like sick and your kids were rough getting to school? Maybe today's not the right day to give feedback. So I always start there now and say, "Can I give you some feedback?" And then I always try to frame it from a standpoint of I love you, not in like the way I love my husband, but I love and care for you and who you are, and I want to help you grow and to remind the person this is just my opinion. I am open to being wrong, but this is how I see this situation. And then opening the conversation, and it's not a one-way conversation; it's a two-way conversation. Remain curious about how they feel. And if somebody's giving me feedback, I always want to remember that feedback is a gift. Feedback helps me grow, feedback helps me get better. And there are times when I may not realize I have blind spots and I may not realize what I am doing that could be harming someone or not helping someone. And so feedback is giving that feedback back to me and helping me get better helps me grow.
Tammy, one of the things we do in the Rising Tide Mastermind is a duct tape session. And we don't really use duct tape, but we pretend that we put duct tape on the members' mouth so they don't have to say anything. They just take it all in. And we share with the members what their superpower is. We share what their kryptonite is. And then we let them know what they really need to do so the group can help them best. Should we put duct tape on when we get feedback?
Sometimes probably yes, but I mean, it depends on what the feedback is, I would say. Like in a session like that, we did a similar exercise on our lead team offsite with three things to start doing, three things to stop doing. But if it's feedback with Tess and I need to talk about something, I think you listen first, but then it's okay to ask questions because I'm not always right. And I could like totally be missing something in my feedback. And Like I said, feedback is just my opinion. I might not be right. And so take it as a gift and do with that gift how you can best process it.
Tessa, let me ask you, when you're on the other side of feedback and they're just not getting it, it's wrong. How do you respectfully relay that to the person that's trying to give you feedback?
I think that's really hard to do for sure. Kind of meeting them where they're at is really all you can do, and trying to see why they might be giving you this feedback. I mean, I would rather have a mentor that gave me a ton of feedback, even if I didn't agree with all of it, rather than an exclusive cheerleader. I have plenty of coworkers that are my cheerleaders and I cheerlead for them, but a mentor, I need someone who's going to push me past what I think I'm capable of, past my limiting self. I had a mentor at my previous company when I was working on my master's thesis. It was on point of use filters. And every time I would meet with this mentor, I absolutely dreaded it because I would go in with work that I thought I did great on. And he would be like, this is great, but let's change this, this, and this. And, it made me better, honestly. He pushed me outside of what I thought I was capable of. He knew that that wasn't my full effort, and it really helps me elevate myself to a whole nother quality of work level. So, even if it's not all feedback I agree with, it's still helpful, I think.
I found personally that my default is to defend whatever it was I did or didn't do. And if I'm doing that, I'm not listening. And I have to come at it from the mindset that feedback is a gift. And if somebody's willing to give it to you, when are you ever going to get that point of view? So sometimes I got to put duct tape on.
I think it's there's that video we saw with the nail in the head, and like,
yeah, it's called The Nail. I love
nail.
that video.
That's what that reminds me of. Like, I know I got a nail in the head. I just don't need you to tell me that.
I will put a link to that in the show notes page. If you have not seen that video, I actually use it in some sales training, but it's a great video. And I'm not going to tell you anymore. You're just going to have to watch it, but you're instantly going to get it.
For sure.
I've had the privilege of working with HOH and all various parts of your company, and I love your culture. What advice can you give to the people listening on some things that they can do to really drive culture, to really drive the things that we are talking about today so everybody is thriving?
Gosh, that's such a hard question sometimes to wrap your head around it, because when you're in a great culture, you forget that you've worked in places that you didn't have a great culture. I think the first thing is you have to be intentional of determining what your culture is. You have to live it, not just give it lip service. It has to go through your veins just like blood and oxygen. And we hire, fire, define what we do by our culture. And so when we're in the interview process, you're going to know our culture. And recently, somebody shared that the reason they decided to go to work for HOH was because from HR to the direct supervisor to our COO, Reed, everybody in individual interviews gave the same answer when we talked about culture. And it matters. We talk about it. It's on our VTO. It's in our mission. And so I think the first thing is intentionality. And you can't have a good culture without being intentional about it.
Yeah, I think it snowballs from the top, right? I mean, we've got that culture starting from all the way from our owner, COO, Reed, that, this is a welcoming space and this is kind of the culture we're going to run with accountability and creativity and being a team. And then, we get to practice that as managers. And it's interesting seeing some of the new hires come from different jobs, different careers, and having to kind of unpack and undamage those people with the whole micromanaging and just this kind of community of trust and support. And that I'm not your boss in the sense that I'm the president and you're the lowly peasant or whatever. More is like, I am your support system and I'm here for you to help you be more effective, you grow your career. That is kind of my first priority. It's not customers or anything like that. My first priority is getting you to a point where you can run the business.
So, what is the bottom line, the one message that you want to make sure that we get across in this interview?
I think for me, we're like, know your worth. And if you're struggling with that, take 30 minutes, go somewhere by yourself, make a list of your limiting beliefs and start to pull those up from the roots because you're not where you are by accident. You are a unique person that has unique talent, and knowing and understanding your value is of the utmost importance. There's a book I'm currently reading. It's called Worthy by Jamie Kern Lima. I saw her at the Global Leadership event over the summer, and it really just chapter by chapter talks about how to overcome those things that you struggle with, that we all struggle with, male, female, and just own who you are and know that you belong.
Yeah, I would say similarly, don't be afraid to be your biggest cheerleader. Voice how great you are. If you're not going to gas yourself up, who will? I mean, being able to articulate those superpowers of what your workplace emotional intelligence is, what value are you adding, what gets you excited? Because if your purpose isn't really aligned with if it is in line with what you're doing, you'll be more invested in it, and you can leverage that power at your current job or future interviews. For example, someone's superpower could be that they're enthusiastic, and that keeps morale up. Morale being high makes them more motivated. When they're more motivated, they're more productive. Higher productivity is always time saved. That's how you can kind of translate your superpower back into your workplace. And I think that's the biggest thing, is being able to speak to that professionally.
In Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, she makes a reference to the corporate ladder, and there's only one way to climb up for success. And she says, no, we got to replace that. It's really a corporate jungle gym now. Tammy, how would you explain that to the Scaling Up Nation?
Oh, I think my career is probably that, a jungle gym in itself, if I think about it. I mean, I started at a paper mill, ended up in water treatment and operations, learned more about water treatment, was over accounting and operations. And then I jumped on a trapeze and swung into sales. And so knowing your value and networking and having people see your skills, that's the corporate jungle gym. Had it not been for masterminds, AWT, I don't know that I would be at HOH. It's using those networks to learn more, grow more, and have more connection with people that can help and support you along the way.
Tessa, if there's somebody listening and maybe they don't know anything about water treatment, maybe they stumbled upon this podcast by accident, what do you want to let them know about this industry?
I think that it can be really challenging on multiple levels, dealing with the technical knowledge. I mean, you could really spend your entire career learning and you still won't know it all, which is exciting, but also terrifying at the same time. And being able to connect with customers, and there will be customers that you don't connect with at all. But what you put into it is what you get out, I think. And that's a really unique experience too. You can grow it as much as you want and take off. Or if, your career isn't your whole life and that's not what you want to do, you can still have a successful workplace. You can still do well. But yeah, I think it's a great industry that more people should be aware of. It's got a lot of flexibility and a lot of stimulating challenges, I think.
Well, Tessa Ing and Tammy Faber of HOH, thank you both for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, Trace. It's always fun to get to talk to you. And I'm super excited Tessa got to be here too.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
Tessa, Tammy, once again, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O program. And Nation, I pulled up some of the resources that we use to see who is in the industrial water treatment industry. And the best statistic that I can find is 25% women. Now, I don't know where they get all that information. I'm going to say based on the sampling of the AWT, unfortunately, I think that seems high. I wish it was 50-50. I've got to say that when we all get together, regardless of who we are, where we come from, all of those different things, and we are collaborating to make whatever we're working on better, That's where true collaboration comes in. And as we talked about on this interview, Tammy Faber is a member of the Rising Tide Mastermind. I met Tammy through the AWT. I've also met Tessa through the AWT as well. But great people. And Tammy is just fantastic when it comes to how she leads people. And I'm saying people, it doesn't matter which race, creed, sex, or whatever. We are all industrial water treaters. And when we focus on that and how we help each other and how we make the industry better, man, that is a part of a story that I want to be a part of. So, Tessa, Tammy, thank you for coming on the Scaling Up podcast, sharing some of the things that maybe we should be thinking about in our company. And Nation, if you have a show idea, I am always looking for them. So go to scalinguph2o.com, go over to our show ideas page. Let me know what that is. Maybe there's a guest that you want me to interview. Maybe you have an idea for next year's Industrial Water Week. Whatever it is, we are always looking for the next show to make sure that the Scaling Up H2O podcast is always staying relevant. And it is your one-stop place for you to consume content when it comes to industrial water treatment. And somebody that is helping us do that each and every week is our friend, James McDonald.
Welcome to Drop by Drop with James, the podcast segment where we wonder, explore, think about, imagine, and learn industrial water treatment, you guessed it, drop by drop, together. In today's episode, I have a challenge for you.
Challenge accepted.
The challenge is: explain alkalinity to a non-technical person. Now, if you're like me, this is a fun challenge. I love explaining industrial water treatment to people. If you're not like me, then sorry, but please do this challenge anyway. Alkalinity is a foundational bit of knowledge we must all understand as industrial water treaters. Technically, it is defined as the acid-absorbing or neutralizing property of water. Sounds simple enough, right? What are the chemical components that make up alkalinity, though? We usually think of carbonate, bicarbonate, and hydroxyl ions, but can there be others? Why does alkalinity matter in cooling systems, boilers, closed loops, and wastewater? The answer can be different for each. How do we measure alkalinity? We talk about P alkalinity, M alkalinity, and OH or hydroxyl alkalinity, but how are each different? How are they related? And what is each measuring? Total alkalinity and M alkalinity are the same thing. That can be confusing to some. Why are they the same? How would you explain this to a non-technical person? Can you explain it right now, or do you need to do a little more research first? Albert Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." This is your challenge to understand alkalinity well enough to explain it simply. I'm James McDonald, and I want to encourage you to be like water by forming bonds with those around you, dissolving new knowledge, and making worthy ripples, drop by drop.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Scaling Up Nation, for not only listening to this podcast, but for sharing this podcast. So many water treaters learn about the Scaling Up H2O podcast because listeners like yourself let other water treaters know that it exists and that there are hundreds of episodes that you can listen to for free while you're driving from account to account, making yourself a better water treater. Nation, I've shared this with you before, but the whole point of this podcast is to raise the bar in the industrial water treatment industry, one water treater at a time. And of course, we do that one show at a time. And I can't wait to bring you a brand new one next Friday. But we've got a week between now and then. I hope you try something new, and I hope that you reach out to somebody and let them know of this awesome podcast. Have a great week, folks. Nation, there's no doubt about it. The industrial water treatment industry is the best job out there, and why not show everybody that you are among the best in the best industry? Well, one of the best ways I know to do that is to let people know that you are a certified water technologist. And if that is something that is on your list to undertake, and I sure hope it is, a great way to start is to go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep to sign up for our CWT prep course to build your confidence so you can sit for that exam. Nation, you deserve to be your best and give your best. So to help you with that, go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep to start getting ready to sit for your Certified Water Technologist exam today.